There we go. We're 1 o'clock UK time, and yeah, we were on our latest required LinkedIn Live. Interesting debate ahead, I'm sure. Like all of these, we're going to hear some great speakers. We're going to also take questions from the audience. So it's an interactive session. So if you've got any comments, questions, just general chit chat, stick them in the comments and we can talk. But to introduce our guests, first off, I'll let you introduce yourself, guys. Gary, you go first.
Yeah, cheers, Andy. I completely agree. I think we're in for a very interesting, insightful next 30 minutes. Thanks for having me. For those I haven't met before, Gary Cordery, Senior Director at Bullhorn. I have just surpassed my 10-year anniversary with Bullhorn. I've seen many of our existing customers register for today's event, so good afternoon to you all, and nice to obviously be acquainted with anyone I haven't met previously. So that's me.
Yeah, so I'm Gabe. I'm here from Woo. I lead partnerships here, and I've been here effectively since we went to market. And yeah, I think there's gonna be a lot of interesting stuff that we could talk about today. Excited for everyone to join us. Already, there's a great amount of people that are here. We're gonna be speaking about stuff that we're seeing from the industry. So really looking forward. And who better to be next to you than Gary and Andy?
Ah, very kind. So we've been talking about this a little while, both of us, both Gary, from the point of view and the observations, some of the stuff we've done on the Bullhorn automation groups, and Gabe coming on board. We've been talking to you about coming on board as a supplier for a little while now, and principally because of the the good things we're hearing in our groups. But you guys have also been talking as well, because you're seeing a lot in the market, and I think we're seeing that common theme in the market around people wanting to use more of their own data asset.
100%. I mean, for those that are unaware, obviously Woo are a marketplace partner to Bullhorn, and over the last, I think, 3 or 4 years in particular, we've just seen an increasing rise of businesses getting a bit smarter about the data that they already have at their disposal. And I think the first disclaimer just to put out there today is that if you're a one-man band just joining this session today, this is probably not for you in truth. But if you are an established agency, particularly in a certain niche vertical, then this is all about getting more from the data that you've already acquired over the years. It's not a bitch fest towards a certain social platform today. It's all about using data smarter and eliminating that cost and dependency that many agencies have on external sources. The oldest cliche in recruitment is, of course, that there's nothing more frustrating than placing a candidate into a role that was on your database already, but you've paid to acquire once again through an external source. And so hopefully we'll have our audience leaving today with a few ideas around how they can make more use of what they've already got.
Yeah, and a little bit of that underlying messaging of, like you said, Andy, about people that want to use their database more or their IP. I think that the actual reason why that's happening now more is because we see that vacancies are down 21% since pre-pandemic, right? The game isn't easy anymore, meaning we can't have mediocrity. We have to find a way to stick out, and why they'll use my agency and not any other agency. And people realize that it's fair game on LinkedIn, it's fair game on job boards. You could, put out the same job descriptions, but it's all about how can I leverage what no one else has? And that's what we'll deep dive into. Seeing what is lying in my database that only I have access to, that data that no one else has access to, or no one could have that same messaging on LinkedIn. It's not sending an email to everyone. It's sending a message to someone that you've spoke with in the past, for example, that's now relevant for a new business op.
And this isn't a new problem. This is an age-old problem. I mean, if we were to take the them that will not be mentioned as a business networking platform, this used to be the job boards as well. I remember we ran similar numbers when we were at S3, and I think it was something circa 70% of the candidates were on our database, and we've been in touch with them in the last 6 months. So the whole point was that we were using, and back then it was job boards, to basically refresh our data.
If it's okay, I'll tell a quick story, because this hits home. And I think a lot of people from the audience will be able to connect. But our founders, Liran and Ami, they started a tech recruiting agency in 2008, late 2008. And they were using Bullhorn, actually. So Gary was doing a great job since back then, obviously.
Show my age.
And what ended up happening was they were sitting in one of their leadership meetings, including with investors, and they were looking at their bills for external sourcing. And they basically said, listen, I know we're forecasting. Their faces turned white when they saw that bill. So they brought in the team leads and they got into a meeting and said, let's use our database. We have Bullhorn. We have tens or even hundreds of thousands of records in there. Let's start using it. You can imagine how pissed they were when they basically were telling them we're getting rid of our premium licenses on different platforms. And and when they got that reaction, they're like, why? And we'll dive into that. But why are they refraining from using their existing database, right? Why is that a scary thought? And what I think that we can then pivot into is, what do they have on different platforms that they don't have in their database? And the hint is, you probably have, with Bullhorn's incredible marketplace, right? You probably have all of those capabilities that you're looking for example, on LinkedIn, that you can then replicate, which is great to be bringing in new people. You could replicate that same experience for your team in your database. So how do we get there?
I think there's also a big efficiency argument here as well. And when we were promoting this webinar in previous days, I spoke about sort of like the 1% rule, and it's not really a hard and fast rule per se. But if you think about the very concept of LinkedIn and the platform that it is, if you're a specialist recruiter, say servicing a vertical here in the UK, you go onto a platform like LinkedIn, there's 1 billion profiles on there. It's a massive pool of people. But how many of those are relevant to you as an agency? Well, if you go and do a ChatGPT search, it will very quickly segment all of the profiles on LinkedIn by geography. So you straight away see that of 1 billion people on LinkedIn, actually only an estimated 45 million are here in the UK. Now, of those 45 million, how many of them are in your vertical or your niche? Well, it could be 2, it could be 3, but in any case, it's a subset of that 45. And then of those 2 or 3 million, how many of those are already people you've spoken to on your database already, because you're that niche market operator that's always looked for professionals in that line of work over the years? The huge irony, of course, is that you're paying LinkedIn for 1% or less than 1% of the profiles on LinkedIn. And the irony being that you've probably already got that 1% and some on your database. So then it becomes about engagement, and it becomes about enriching that data that you've already got and utilizing it more effectively, because it is so cost effective if you do. And to Gabe's previous point, markets have been tough. There's not many a recruiter out there that would tell you otherwise over the last 24 months. So how frustrating then is it to part with that hard-earned cash? And it is an extortionate outlay for many, when the majority of what you need actually is already right under your nose. So that's what we're here to try and improve.
Yeah, I think Gabe, market's being tough. It's always this tough. It was just easy for a little bit. I think that's what people actually forget. It's always this tough. So yeah, it just this is there was a new normal that wasn't so normal. So look, I think it's a really good point. You're effectively paying for 1 billion records. So by that very nature, 999 million of those for most organizations are going to be completely irrelevant in terms of your ability to sort of monetize that, but you're still obviously paying for potential access to that. I think it actually plays into what I was reading earlier in the week, actually, around the whole sort of move around AI. So I think it was IBM were looking at large language models and predicting the future of small language models. So what that actually means is that I don't need my business's system to understand astrophysics. I just need it to understand my business. And it's a similar thing what you're describing here. You don't need all of those candidates. You don't need all of that ability. You just need to work with your niche better than anyone else.
And Bullhorn has a great stat on that from the Grid Report, right? They say that 70% of the placements you make on average are coming from your database. They were already there before. So that's something that I would go and I would audit now, right? If I'm any agency and I could understand that, I don't know, 70%, 80% of the records I'm looking at on LinkedIn are already in my database, I need to start recalculating how much my spend is towards my database or towards other platforms. I don't know if any of you saw, by the way, the LinkedIn's new AI hiring assistant that came out this week, or was at least announced this week.
Not yet. No.
So happy to share this. And it's a brilliant tool where you're able to go into LinkedIn and you're able to use natural language to explain what you're looking for. And then you're able to add them to some campaign and make that outreach. Now, with InMails being more expensive now, it is going to be pretty costly. But now that really evens the playing field, right? If once staffing and recruiting was about who can build the best Boolean search and who could find candidates more accurately, the playing field is even when it comes to the searching and matching, right? Bullhorn search and match, for example. So it really can't be about just that mass outreach to the relevant candidates. It really has to be to the quality ones, like Holly is saying right now, right? It has to be to the quality candidates, and it has to be relationship based, because that's going to be our advantage. Everyone's going to be sending out an email to the same person because they have the same job opening, but only the ones that you've worked with are going to be more inclined to respond to you, as opposed to any other agency that used the AI hiring assistant and is now able to reach out to them easily as well.
Yeah, and there's definitely, I think that there's two things around the emails that we're seeing in the group. The first thing is the pricing. You know, the once you're out of bundle, going from, I think it's £2 to £14 or $2 to $14. Yeah, I can't remember what, but you know, that's a big jump. You know, 700% is a big jump for you know. Actually, potentially quite interesting, because actually then you might get less emails, so they might become, so it might be perverse.
It's the silver lining for sure.
Yeah,
There'll be more quality messaging for sure.
It's a silver lining unless you're paying 14 for them. So I suspect, but so that's quite interesting. But actually, the feedback we're getting is the response rates are down, and it's not just response rates for LinkedIn emails, it's for email, it's for SMS. You know, so generally percentages are down. So curating your own community is super important. I think it was Mark Cohen. I saw a post from him a couple of days back saying, literally, guys, you've got a year or two to build your own community before it's just, you'll never be able to do it. It's just going to get lost in noise. So and I thought that was a very interesting point as well.
We was having a bit of fun with this, weren't we, Andy, last week when we caught up? But as an agency, it's quite scary, I think, when you consider if LinkedIn can put the price up by 600-700% for in-mails. If LinkedIn put another $5,000 on the recruiter license tomorrow, do you still renew that subscription? If they put another $7,000, $8,000, like where do you start to draw that line? And I think there are some businesses out there that really haven't pivoted at all in recent years to embrace things like automation, and then AI obviously is its natural, still complementary successor, if you like. And those businesses are the ones that I think this is the whole reason we've called today's session what we've called it. It is a mindset shift. We recognize for businesses that have always done things a certain way using a certain platform, like in the main, to come away from that might feel so scary to begin with. But when you already have 50, 60, 70,000 records, you've got that critical mass of candidates, contacts, companies that are already known to you as a niche market operator. You've got an established brand, an established reputation to these people who are in your database for a reason already, for the most part. You know, there's always that little bit of chaff in every database, but for the most part, it's now a case of how are you engaging that talent, because the tools, and obviously we will come on to the how shortly, but the tools do now exist to enrich that data that you've already got, which makes your engagement and your outreach more meaningful. And of course, that then makes your database more trustworthy. And if your database is trustworthy, searches are more accurate, why then do you need to let people step outside of it?
Yeah, I mean, we've got a comment from Murray Clark. The irony that this is happening on LinkedIn.
It is ironic, Murray, it is.
It's a little bit ironic. But the other way of looking at it is as well, I mean, I don't necessarily think it even means reducing spend. I think it's maximizing investment. So we're not necessarily saying that you won't use this, but it's getting the most out of it. And so it's not necessarily even reducing, right, just delivering more revenue potentially as well. So, but you're right, that elasticity of, of demand for LinkedIn and certain job boards as well is pretty crazy. I think the and Rob Heseltine, not enamored with LinkedIn's AI tool straight off the bat. So terrible tool, doesn't work. Had a demo, fell over in minutes. So if we get to the end of the broadcast, then great. If I'm shadow banned, you never see this again. Fantastic. It's a great platform. I think one of the other things that's really important as well is the customer experience as well. And we talk about following candidates and not being transactional. Some of the things that when I used to speak with candidates and especially contractors, find out what was important. It was you only ever call me when you need me. So it was the whole point of you don't stay in touch, and it's quite a transactional relationship. I guess actually talking to people, talking to people in a continuous way and knowing where they are and updates is important. I guess that's what you guys set out to achieve as well, keeping that permanent conversation going.
Yeah, that's a great use case of data and automation, right? Because when would a candidate want to be reached out to from the staffing agency? So I'll give an example. The candidates that you're placing are getting promoted eventually, right? Hopefully in the roles that they're in. That's a perfect time to say, not only did I place you in this role and I reached out because I wanted to make the commission off of you, but congratulations, I saw you were now promoted, right? That's a nice point. But what happens if theoretically that candidate that now got promoted is going to be building out a team because now he's a team lead? We see the opportunity here, right? Our database isn't stale just because the data is staying stale. It's also stale because they're mobile, right? They're switching, things are happening. And now that candidate can be turned into a client contact, right? Might be a hiring manager. So staying in touch with us with them is also good for on the personal level to build your personal brand, right? But it's also very beneficial revenue wise, because if the candidate's now promoted, he might be hiring. If the candidate maybe switched to a new role, maybe he's relevant for a new job opening you have. If the hiring manager moved to a new company, then maybe you could win that new logo, right? So all of the people that are in your database are very relevant for new business. It's not just focusing on the past. And that's why I hate the name applicant tracking system. So if Bullhorn wants to switch from the ATS, but it shouldn't be only about applicants. It should be your whole network. Yeah.
I think you're absolutely right. It's around the whole piece. It's not just about applications. It's about people who are there and people who can be regenerated. One of the exercises I do as an advisor, one of the things I'll go through and I'll look at the value and try and ascribe a value to that data, and what's there that's gold and what's not being used. What would we do if all we could use was the database? And it's amazing, actually. People come up with we'd run a routine and we'd do this, and we'd call all the people we haven't called in a year, or we'd call all of the managers we had a job with a year ago, and it's like, wow, okay. And there is actually such value in people's data. And one of the pros and one of the cons in recruitment is that nobody gets rid of data. That's the other thing. You just hoard it and hold on to it. So if actually at some point you do come back to it and do something properly with it, most recruitment agencies are sat on treasure troves of data.
Well, you mentioned, Andy, earlier on the user group. So a shameless plug at this point in time, but there's a classic case in point. We had a client feature on a recent user group who spoke to wanting to clean the data. They have taken on Bullhorn automation to do that because doing these things manually, it's impossible, frankly, when you've got over 100,000 records in your CRM. But they don't want to just do a mass delete because, of course, there could be nuggets in that database. And lo and behold, they run an passive re-engagement campaign, and the net result, without boring everyone to tears with the detail behind it, is they make a placement from a candidate who hasn't been spoken to, not a single note against their record that was on Bullhorn 10 years ago, into a role within a matter of a week, and generated a 19K placement fee. So you can clean data. There's nothing wrong with that, of course. But if you can re-engage that data as well, just before culling it, there are nuggets in there from years ago, potentially. So again, if you was to switch off external sources, these results are possible, and businesses out there are achieving them.
So I guess the question I would ask to specify is, let's say we're to turn off those external sources, right? What is inclining for them, or what does it make it so addicting for our consultants today to go to a place like LinkedIn, right? What do they have there that they would need for it to exist in their database to make this practical? Because we understand database is good. We want to use our database. But if I'm listening to this webinar and I'm saying, okay, great, but LinkedIn, for example, has X, Y, and Z functionality, what is that functionality that they would be looking to replicate in their ATS?
Yeah.
Any ideas?
I don't know. One of the things I do go through with people is is around that exercise. First off, before you give people, LinkedIn or job board advertising, it's a really good thing to teach people how to resource properly with what you actually have. And it's a really powerful way of doing it. And almost then when they've proven that they realize how important the asset is and maintaining the asset, and when you get new information that you're doing that, or you're putting in the right information so it can be automated and uploaded. So that's what I would sort of say. I appreciate it doesn't quite answer your question, but that's what I would say.
It'd probably be quite an interesting question to ask the audience, what the biggest fear of switching LinkedIn off, actually is to them, and what it means, and how much they depend on it. I think it's always an interesting
and job boards and other tools.
Generally. And again, something I think to think about, we recognize as well that for a lot of established businesses that do have thousands of records, it's all very well engaging those records, but also what mechanisms do you have to have the engagement that those people have with your outreach update your CRM automatically? And what tools do you have, say like a Woo, that can be routinely updating various and specific data points you hold on those profiles that mean it's much more real time all the time? Because I imagine a lot of the fear would be, well, if I was just stuck with my CRM tomorrow, well, I think a lot of it's out of date, for starters. Well, that can be addressed. Last touch points were years ago. Is that data relevant? Well, that can be addressed. And the list just goes on and on. But of course, you've got to put these mechanisms in place if you really are serious about reducing that dependency and costs that we've spoken about. But the tools do exist. It's just being lazy.
I think the other thing is as well.
To that point.
Sorry?
Rob just said it's just being lazy. I think, yes, it's habit, which is why we come back to this cheesy title that we've called this today. It is a habit, but there is a way of also breaking that habit and arguably making it even easier.
Yeah, look, I think it is a little bit lazy. I mean, you see people. I think one of the things actually, getting hold of candidates' mobile numbers makes a difference, or managers' mobile numbers. And I think now we're in a world where we'll get it off Apollo, we'll get it off Lucia, something like that. So people don't go that extra mile to get that information, which actually might not even be publicly available. So for me, it's the stuff that isn't going to be publicly available. You're not going to be able to, as good as things like Clay are, et cetera. Some of it is just not living. And if you look, I don't know what the trend is, but there's some horrific stat about the amount of software developers, for example, that are not on LinkedIn. You might go find them on GitHub or places like that, Stack Overflow, places like that. But they're just so worn down by the amount of inbound they get, irrelevant calls, et cetera. They're just hiding their profiles or locking their profiles.
Yeah. Definitely, that's, I could speak from firsthand experience in kind of our product. We also see that not everyone is on LinkedIn, and not everyone has the public LinkedIn profile, right? So diversification and data points to make sure that everything is kept up to date cannot be from one source. It has to involve places just like you said, like GitHub. But I think that also what you were saying, Gary, is a fair point, right? If I would tell everyone, shut down the lights on all the external sources you're going to your database, a big reason why they would say I have nothing to work with it. And this is also a reason why people are scared to do client-facing automations, even though they're so powerful, is because they say the record is outdated, right? So shamelessly agreeing on the Woo point, right? We need to make sure that our database is kept up to date because we can't do it manually. And if we don't even know the very basics of what job title are they in right now, what location are they based in, then all of our matching goes out the window. But to my question about what we're looking for and why people go to places like LinkedIn and job boards is the people that are on there and are public are keeping their stuff up to date. So you know that you're finding the relevant jobs. It's also intuitive to search and match, right? Even using the same wording as what we can do in Bullhorn, right? But we can search and match, and then we could mass outreach, right? Based off of those roles that we have. All of those capabilities exist. And reporting and analytics, fine. You have the same thing internally in your ATS. So I think that people are maybe, either they don't know about it yet and they say, you know what, I didn't realize I have that capabilities. Or like Rob said, it's a little bit lazy. It's kind of just like, if it ain't broken, don't fix it. But we're only going to realize that when, like you said, Gary, when suddenly they added 5,000 or 10,000 or 15,000 pounds, then it gets to a point where like, wait 1 second, what happened to our margins?
And I think to Rob's point there as well, job boards, because they're looking, I mean, this lends itself quite nicely to actually making your CRM or thinking about your CRM like it is LinkedIn. Make it work like LinkedIn. There's the open to work banner that we've all seen on LinkedIn when someone's available to work. Well, why not go and send an automation out to all of your candidates and have them update whether they're looking for work or not, and have that automatically update a status in your CRM, so that when you're performing searches, you might want to go to those people that have said they're actively looking for work. What a great addition to your search from your CRM, where you might have a mobile phone number for that person, an email address for that person already. You might have had some recent traction. They might open your newsletters, things like this. You can actually, there are ways, again, of making your database work like LinkedIn and have some similarity to how you go about finding people on LinkedIn. It's just a lot more cost effective.
I think sorry.
No, go for it.
Yeah, look, I think the other thing as well is that this technology is available now to what we call growth and enterprise customers. When I would have done this 20 odd years ago, it was 20 years ago. That was £1 million project. The automations that we were running, the regens around that, and we were having to code this. It was we were running this through Oracle database. It was big work. Now, someone who's I guess a bit of a hacker could well, not even hacker. That's just someone who's a very I guess competent business user can go in and write these rules, write these businesses, and write it in natural language, as you're saying.
A good example is the backdoor hiring that you dealt with, right, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a big one.
Yeah.
And it's a big one that we could generate revenue from. So, I mean, how did it work back then, I guess, right? To catch backdoor hires.
I can't tell you the routines we used to run, as I think they're called GDPR. But yeah, absolutely. I think your tech does it, Gabe. So for me, one of the automations I would run is, okay, Andy's been for an interview at, let's just say, Goldman Sachs. If Andy ends up at Goldman Sachs, send me an alert, because I'm going to, if we didn't, and there is no placement, send me an alert, because I'm going to go and investigate what happened there. I mean, when I did a project for a company in the US, I looked both them and previous companies I've used, and the paper I wrote, I think somewhere between 3 to 5% of gross profit, you're missing a year. If you don't have a systematic way of tracking placements that. And it's not always clients deliberately backdooring you. It's also as well people forgetting that the agency were involved in the process, maybe going back 3 months later. So it's not always a nefarious exercise, but go and collect that three. I'm sure if you ask most agencies now, would they like 3% more gross profit for last year? I think they'd be delighted.
They would accept for sure. And I think that this also goes into the point of why I hate the name ATS. Because there's so much revenue you can generate from that database that it's sinning to the ATS by calling it an ATS. Because, like we said, backdoor hires, pretty simple. If we're tracking our candidates and we're running an automation, we could tell exactly who we submitted that's now ended up at that role, and we can alert the right person, right? Very simple. Another thing that's very popular today, and again, why people I think like going to different platforms, is BizDev. Historically, an ATS wasn't built for BizDev, right? Yet right now, everyone needs to win new roles. The typical clients aren't hiring. Everyone's talking about how can I win new roles right now. But when we think about it, the hiring managers that we're storing are not just the ones that we're matching to the applicants, again, like it used to be. They're dynamic. They might now be hiring. Maybe they went on a hiring freeze. Now they're hiring again. Now they're at a new company. Now they're promoted. Now they're in a different division. There's so much that we can do with those hiring managers, those client contacts that we have in our ATS, that could also generate revenue for us. And when we maybe realize that or think about that, and we could say, maybe we don't need these platforms that are more built for it from the beginning. And we could say, and that's a lot of what Bullhorn's doing as well right now, and developing the BizDev functionality, is to be able to say, those people are also very valuable to win new business. It's a cycle, and we could use our ATS for applicants and for candidates and past candidates that we placed, and also our hiring managers that are mobile. They're moving places.
Again, we've seen some examples recently of that happening as well with automation from within the CRM. Things like salary surveys, newsletters, things like that, to engage lapsed clients that businesses have worked with in the past. We've seen some really good examples of that. The data is there. It's just unlocking it. And the beauty of automation, of course, is it does bring some consistency to the game. It makes sure that, of course, things happen at the right time, every time, regardless of that being a BD outreach, or maybe it's an NPS survey, maybe it's a re-engagement campaign, maybe it's a testimonial after a placement's been made. But all of these things are just putting the data to work. Ultimately, the data that, again, to finish where we started, as an agency, you already own. You've paid for this over the years. Don't keep paying again for it. Get the data working.
Marketing people are definitely smiling right now, because marketing always says, always tell me the same thing. We work so hard to stick out on a place like LinkedIn, and they create beautiful messaging, and they get to the right people on LinkedIn, because LinkedIn helps them get to the right, audience, right? And then the candidate actually comes in and sends in their CV. And then what some people call this a silver medalist, right? What if they were the second person? So they didn't get placed, but marketing did a great job to bring them in. So they already own them. Why not now leverage that silver medalist and make him a gold medalist at another opening that you have? But 9 times out of 10, we're forgetting that silver medalist. And what we're probably doing is running another campaign to try and re-engage them externally, when we can run that campaign internally. Now, again, we need to make sure that the data is up to date in the system, so that we're not reaching out 5 years later for that same role that he's probably overqualified for. But assuming that we have that historic data that we've already acquired and that we've kept it up to date, there's no reason why we shouldn't do campaigns to re-engage those silver medalists.
I think it may be a bit controversial, but that's sort of what I do. I actually think as well that actually and we're talking about the sort of the mid to larger firms. The issue they fundamentally faced is the barrier to recruitment has got lower and lower and lower as we've gone on. I mean, when I first started, getting hold of candidates was very expensive. You probably had to put ads in newspapers and think, yeah, we did. And you have to fax off your job to JobServe, and it would literally come.
It's a fax.
Exactly. So actually, the availability of candidates weren't there, and then with the job boards, with the internet, with LinkedIn, more candidates. But just go back to that point that you're someone who is a good consultant, can leave your business, and if you're reliant on effectively external platforms, they can go and buy that external platform, and they can set up on their own in their bedroom. They'll have lower costs. They're not employing lots of people. They've not got a support service back office. They're just there, and effectively you're fishing in the same pond as probably one of your more talented consultants. So actually, without creating that moat around your business, and if all you're doing is to training people and getting really, really good at using external tools that they can just go and buy, what's the real USP of your business?
I'm not sure we'll hear a better point made on this call today. Isn't there just an irony that you pay so much money to enable a recruiter in your business with that expensive license? None of it's tracked in your CRM. I know there are integrations, that exist, but again, lots of businesses don't always enable them or whatever. But the second they walk out of the door, everything gone with them.
Yeah,
it's hugely ironic.
What's really interesting for me, I mean, we're about to relaunch Required Plus. So it's our training development platform. We really pleased with how it went, but we got some great feedback on why it could be better. But typically, one of the things we always used to get is you can get unlimited users for 400 or 500 quid and a month, and it was like, wow, okay, this is good, but then still people worried about the price point, yet they would spend that on one recruiter license for one recruiter, as opposed to training their whole organization and training their whole organization to sell, to spin, to write better copy, to hunt passive all of those things. And it's like, well, actually, I still think rather than it literally was a cost of training a whole organization versus probably a recruiter license. And I'm like, and people are still choosing that. And each their own. And maybe we need to do a better job of selling ourselves, but each their own. It was just there's a company I worked with in the States, and they used to call it the crack pipe. People are so addicted to these external sources that they just want to get them off of it.
If 80% of your placements are coming from, let's say, LinkedIn, are you an agency or are you just a LinkedIn reseller, right? Or just wrapping it from LinkedIn? So I think it's something to think about. And I think practically, it doesn't have to be cold turkey. right? You don't have to say, okay, that's it. No one is on it. But as a little bit of a practical step that an agency can take, let's say after this webinar saying, oh my God, I need to restructure my budgets, is they can say, let's at first run the analytics of how many of my placements are coming from people that were in my database before. That's a simple one. The second thing is we can start putting in incentivization to use our database as opposed to external sources. Something that I see works for other agencies is saying, for example, right now, let's say you get 50, whatever it is, X for a placement. Let's make maybe, if you make the placement from your internal database, 2X commission. And if it's from external sources, half of that commission. It's a little bit of a drastic move, but it gets people using their database. And once you start using your database, as much as the external is crack, your database and how easy it is to pick up the phone to someone that already knows your brand is so much easier than what we're doing right now. I'm not talking about the cheap mass in-mailing and just forgetting about it and waiting for luck or playing the numbers game. If you're to cold call someone that has no idea who you are and try and explain your USP, for someone that you've already proven yourself to, that becomes crack. And then you could already just take the structure and bring it back to what commission was. But it's things like that that you could start implementing now. We have one agency, another example, that they came to us distraught. They were making 80% exactly 80%, by the way, of their placements externally. And they were very distraught. And what they did is they said that they're going to implement Woo so that everything's brought up to date and they can trust it and they could have that LinkedIn experience in their database. And what they said was that once a week, external sources are off. We'll have a pizza party in the office. We'll order in whatever you want. We'll put on music. We're only using the ATS that one day. Now they make 85% of their placements from their database. So it's that small incremental steps that will eventually over time compound.
It's the only way as well that you'll ever understand what's wrong with your database.
That's a really good point.
The way is the only way you'll find out, okay, well, these fields are lacking up-to-date information. That's how we improve the searches. That's how we get in tune and in touch with those at the coalface, the consultants doing this day in, day out. But incremental steps, and I really want to reiterate that point from Gabe there, that no one's suggesting here today that you go and turn everything off tomorrow. It is a process to go on, and we do believe that the fortune will favour those that are brave enough to start doing it in incremental fashion, small baby steps. But you can then start to see a path, hopefully, of how you reduce that dependency and associated cost. And there are so many benefits over and above just the actual fees being saved themselves around sourcing from your CRM. That's an obvious one. But it can be done. And to Gabe's point, there are businesses out there that 5-6 years ago, when they signed up with Bullhorn, they were LinkedIn heavy. They were 50 Bullhorn licenses, 50 LinkedIn licenses. And fast forward to present day, they've now got a handful of LinkedIn licenses, with that high percentage of candidates coming from Bullhorn, or candidates on Bullhorn, I should say, at the time that the job was created. So it can be done. Yeah,
look, as a business advisor, I go into the business and take any sort of what we know about recruitment out of it. I mean, if you actually didn't even know the industry, you would go and say 80% of placements come from one source. What happens if that one source changes? And you see this with, you've actually seen this in South Africa. Takealot with a big e-commerce site and used to effectively be a platform for resellers. And then Takealot just said, we're going to go direct. And all of these third-party sellers had effectively built they hadn't built their own websites, hadn't built their own shop fronts. And when that came, they had to pivot really quick. And most of them worked it all out. But just as a business risk, if 80% of your business comes from one place, what are you doing to mitigate that? What are you doing to mitigate that risk?
And that's what you were saying before, Andy, about, well, if LinkedIn were to hike the price by $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, in some cases, businesses won't have a choice, which is a scary, scary place to be.
Look, and if you look at the numbers in terms of percentages we see come through, I think 10-15%, is not unusual. I don't know many businesses that are able, that have the elasticity of demand that are able to do it. But again, if you get the return, great. But the point we're making is you could be getting more of a return from it by really using it. We've got a point from Rob. Commissions, don't incentivize it. Reduce comms if you place a candidate from external and they're in your ATS within the last 12 months. Track initial source, placement source stings more than paying more. Oh, there we go. So don't incentivize. So basically, Gabe, you were carrot, Rob Heseltine, your stick. Nice. There we go. That's a true. That's the difference in a software vendor.
I'd like to know, actually. I'd love to know if Rob actually does this today, or whether this is an idea that's just come into Rob's head as a result of this call, and equally whether anybody else has got anything similar in their business today. But I think it's a great point. Really great.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think if we're looking at takeaways today, actually, I think you can only change what you measure. It'd be really interesting if people did actually measure where they're getting their candidates from, but also as well, an interesting exercise. Did they already have them, or if it wasn't for that external source, could they have got them somehow? And it's a really interesting exercise that you can go, and even if you just do like placements the last 3 months, for most firms, it'll be really indicative of what the opportunity is.
I also think as well, if you look at your CRM, be it Bullhorn, another, if you consider like what are the most important fields that you have populated on a candidate, but also on a contact record and client perspective, but if we, for the purposes of this example, focus on candidates, if things like location, job title, postcode, up-to-date address, mobile phone number, go and audit your CRM and see how many of those fields across the thousands and thousands and thousands that you've got are up to date. In many cases, they'll be empty. There's your first automation opportunity. Where it's a bit out of date, but you have something there to work with, there's your re-engagement type opportunity, and make sure that actually the details that you hold are up to date. And if you can audit your data like that and then update it en masse using tools like automation or Woo, then you're in that place where you've got a pretty sound database that you will have that confidence to turn it off one day a week, get the pizzas in, have a bit of fun sourcing from your CRM. And hopefully that light will start to emerge at the end of the tunnel that shows you the path to making recruitment far more cost effective for your business.
We classically see that in the groups when LinkedIn goes down. So, I mean, it doesn't happen often, but when LinkedIn's down, so everyone's like, "Where's my password? Where's my login?" Yeah. So, yeah, you do see that occasionally. Gabe, if people were to do one thing, if anyone on this were to do one thing right now, what should it be?
Apart from buy Woo, come on, Gabe.
That's the most important. That's a good question. I would definitely start with the analytic angle. So things like Gary mentioned, or I was saying before, of looking internally and saying, how many of my placements are coming from people that are already in my database? That's something that we know how to run. And how many of my records are missing key data or haven't been updated in the last X amount of time? Things like that will say, why am I even using a database, right? And no one will say, why am I using a database, so I need to get rid of it? People will say, why am I using a database? How do I actually make it work for me, right? So the one thing I would say to do right now is to gather the ops team, right? And start running those numbers and saying, is this a legitimate alternative to external spend? Because like you said, with the 80%, we need to diversify. We can't have all of our business coming from one place. And meanwhile, our home base is unusable. So I would run those numbers as the first thing.
Okay. Gary?
I've actually got 3. I'm going to
He had time to think. That's not fair.
I did. And you bought me time as well, Gabe. So thank you. There you go. But one of them is to audit the placements made. That's a great barometer of where you sit on this journey. Like whether you're fairly advanced, whether you're miles away. But in any case, find out where you are and how far you are away. Ultimately, 2, think about the fields on your candidates. What are important? What is really the absolute gold standard for you as a business in terms of your candidate profiles? If you had all of these fields updated with information on your candidates, you would then think, right, that candidate profile is as good as it could ever be. So think about those fields and then go and audit how healthy those fields are across the masses of candidates in your database. And the third one is a bit of a shameless plug. It's completely free resource. We've spoken a little bit about automation, well, quite a bit. In fact, we've spoken about our community, our automation user group. For anybody unaware, this is where Bullhorn customers do come together and they share ideas and concepts that are working for them. Our use case library is now a public resource. There's over 120 examples in there of how you could be putting your data to work from data hygiene to candidate engagement to contractor redeployment, but the list goes on and on. If you don't mind, Andy, dropping the link into the chat, I don't think I have the ability to do it. Anybody's welcome to go and access that resource. I think it will give you some food for thought around how you could be working your data more smartly.
Yeah, the link will be in the comments at the end. Just ping it to me. That was that 2 or was that 3?
Might have been 4, actually. I don't know. I wasn't counting.
We do have a question for you, Gary, actually, from Dave Jenkins. Your idea around the green badge. So what Dave's saying, is it possible to run that with a timestamp? So when someone says, I'm available for work on the 1st of September, you can see that that's when they flagged it.
Yeah, absolutely is. And that's where a two-way mechanism with automation comes into its own, because if you've got the relevant setup, of course, in this case, in your Bullhorn environment, but if you've got a date available from field that the survey outreach is then capturing that information directly from the candidate says, I'm available from X date, that can write back into the relevant field. And of course, then when you run your search in Bullhorn, you include that criteria in your search, and that's how you would identify those candidates. That is an example, by the way, that a client of ours shared in one of our user groups that is on the use case library. But Dave, happy to chat offline as well if it would help.
And I guess you can even create triggers for that. So if you're following a candidate, you've tagged a candidate, and that candidate says, look, I'm looking, great. That's you want to be first on that conversation.
Yeah, and what about when a candidate faces a role as well, and then they've moved into a role and then change the status, they're unavailable and things like that. All just relevant triggers to help make searches more impactful. It's
from Dave Jenkins again. Yeah, we're a Bullhorn user. That's fine. They speak to customers as well as sales. Don't worry. It's all
I will locate your account manager and make sure that is shared with you accordingly. It's a great use case. No problem at all.
But definitely along those lines of open to work, I would say that we should be definitely data driven, not data, let's say data hygiene, but data of when are most people most likely to entertain a new role. So one stat, for example, is that people are most likely to entertain a new role shortly after getting promoted, a few months after. Why? Because they realize that they're in a new, let's say, bracket of compensation. So, okay, they got maybe a 10% increase from their existing company, but now I became a senior software engineer instead of a software engineer. Maybe I'm entitled to more. Maybe it's more than a 10% price increase. Maybe other companies are willing to pay me more. So we can spark and trigger automation. So this is where I think also going into Woo and automation comes together, where if we're being fed automatically fresh data, that can then trigger different automation. So along those lines, if someone was promoted, then obviously right away send out a message saying, hey, I've been tracking, I've been keeping touch, I've been keeping track, congrats on the promotion. And 3 months later, I want to set up a message that says, I know that you're in a new compensation bracket. We actually have X, Y, and Z role that we auto-matched you to. Would you be willing to entertain a new role? So that's where it comes in, that the power of having continuous fresh data and that triggering based off of actual data points that we have and that we can analyze is very powerful to put our network to work in an automated fashion.
I think the other thing in a year or two's time, and let's wind this back in a year or two's time for that real I told you so moment. Firms are going to be building their own SLMs and their own custom GPTs because it's their data that will give them their advantage with their customers. So large language models are great, but that's the everything. And just go back to the earlier point. Your data is going to be your superpower. And the best time to do this was 10 years ago. The next best time is now. And so I think firms that are investing in that, both the tools and both the tech, and also as well getting the most out of their external investments, are going to be the ones that in a year or two's time will really be able to take advantage.
I mean, if you are a business as well, thinking about that event in a year or two's time or whenever, but what is it that you do that's going to appeal to an investor? Like if you have no intellectual property, if you've got no scalable, repeatable process, if you may well be profitable, you may well be generating healthy revenues, but if you can't demonstrate how that is repeatable, scalable, tracked, where the growth opportunity lies, like the IP of your data, I just don't see how you start from the ground.
And we talk about, Gary, about people looking to exit their businesses. And one of the things that, if you are looking to value a recruitment company, you've obviously got the value of your your contractor book, maybe your customer base, your people, but also as well your data asset. What sets you apart? What's unique as well? And I think a lot of recruitment businesses, a lot of times when I did due diligence for S3, you'd look at, when the two top people walk out the business in 3 years' time after earnout, what are we actually left with? And it wasn't, what are we buying here? And it wasn't often a whole lot. If you can show that you've got a process and a system that will not only survive without you, but will grow and flourish, then you've got a really powerful story to be telling. And I think, again, we'll see the M&A world come back in the next year or two, and those are the questions that can be asked. What's your strategy for data? So anyway, we'll replay this in a year or two's time and see if we were right. Coming towards the end of the session now. Liz Smith, great use case, thank you. That's I think that was for you, Gabe. And that actually is for you, Gary, for the open to work. So thanks everyone for coming on the call. We've
One
enjoyed
of our clients. I can't take the. I'm just relaying the message, honestly.
Yeah. So we've enjoyed chatting about this. We've talked about this for a little while. I think what's really come through is the passion you guys have got for this as well, and just as well the belief that this is the right thing to do. And I think it's really borne out by what we see in our networks. Gary, if people want to get hold of you, how can they do so?
I was about to say LinkedIn. Well, of course you can.
I was going to say also, I was like, that was so ironic. LinkedIn,
well, we should connect on LinkedIn. That's not, that's not big deal. Gary.Cordery@bullhorn.com is my email address. I love having these conversations, Bullhorn client or not. If you're not a Bullhorn client, no hard sale. If you are a Bullhorn client, I'd love to hear from you. We have our user groups as well that we run every single month. I host those user groups. So hopefully some people that are on attending here today have attended those previously, but if you haven't, get involved. As a Bullhorn client, especially, they are for you. Great way of unlocking more potential from your investment in us, or happy to take a phone call as well. Do my details get shared, Andy, after this?
We'll share them, don't you worry. They're on there.
And mobile as well. So any of those channels, and it'd be great to connect with some new people as well.
Gabe?
Just for some social proof, I spoke to a Bullhorn client this morning that said that I told him I was going to be on this webinar, and he said Gary's passion is second to none. So he's not kidding when he's saying he's happy to have a call with you guys. I mean, definitely I would reach out.
I'm running out of money for the favors I've called in, though. So
there you go. Best way to reach me would ironically be on LinkedIn, Gabe Mendelsohn, but on the free version. And my email address is gabrielm@woo.io. And I'm happy to discuss everything. Specifically, what my passion about is connecting data and automation. I think that's really, when we talk about AI, it's really just a wrapper of how we can automate using data. So anyone that wants to talk to me specifically, why agencies use Woo to keep their database fresh and up to date, all of that data to then power whatever tools they then want to use on it, more than happy to connect and chat about that.
Awesome. And the other thing, this is brought to you by the Required Network. Thank you very much. Bullhorn and Woo are very grateful for your partnership. We do have an independent Bullhorn user group where Bullhorn users can come on, share hints, tips, wins, even sort of queries about how to do things. And that's been incredibly powerful alongside your own official user groups as well. So just want to take time. Thanks, guys. Much appreciated. And definitely catch up soon.
Really,
Thank
really
you so much.
Thanks for everybody that took the time as well to join us this afternoon. Appreciate that. And we should do it again sometime. It's fun.
If LinkedIn allows us.
Very fun. Next time on a different